All right, let's dive into emotional intelligence today. EQ. You've probably heard that EQ can be even more important than IQ for personal development. But what does that actually mean for you?
That's the $1 million question, honestly. It's one of the reasons EQ can be so tricky. Unlike an IQ test with a neat little number, EQ is more about these subtle skills you use in everyday life.
Okay, no easy shortcuts. That makes this deep dive even more valuable, right? I've been digging through some fascinating articles and research. 90% of top performers have high EQ. Color me intrigued.
Right. That statistic always catches people's attention. It's from Daniel Goleman's research. He's the guy who really put EQ on the map, especially in leadership circles. But even if you're not gunning for the C-suite, these skills are like superpowers for your personal life too.
All right, how do we unlock these superpowers? I'm ready to level up my EQ game.
First, we gotta bust some myths. EQ isn't about being a Pollyanna, always happy and agreeable. It's more like having an emotional toolkit to understand and manage your feelings, not just repress them.
So, no burying feelings deep down and pretending everything's fine. Got it.
Exactly. It's a set of skills you can learn and build upon, not some fixed personality trait. And those skills fall into four main domains, kind of like the pillars of EQ.
Okay, lay those pillars on me. What are we talking about here?
First up is self-awareness. This isn't just knowing what you feel, it's about understanding why you feel it and how those emotions drive your actions. Think of someone who's always getting stressed out. Self-awareness would help them spot their triggers, deadlines maybe, and find ways to stay calm, like taking a quick walk to clear their head.
So it's about knowing your emotional patterns, not just reacting blindly.
Right. And that leads beautifully into the next domain, self-management. This is your impulse control, your ability to stay cool under pressure. Think of it as the steering wheel for your emotional car.
So instead of flying off the handle when someone cuts you off in traffic, you can take a breath and choose a more productive response.
Exactly. A great example of this is Govin Brown, a bus driver in New York City. Even on the most chaotic days, he greeted every passenger with a smile and genuine conversation. He even called them his flock, because he was a pastor too. This guy used EQ to not only manage his own stress, but to actually uplift everyone around him.
Wow, that's amazing. It shows how EQ can be contagious, creating a ripple effect of positivity. Okay, what's next on this EQ journey? We've tackled our inner world. What about other people?
That's where social awareness comes in. It's all about empathy, which is more than just feeling sorry for someone. It's about truly understanding their perspective, even if you don't agree with it.
It sounds simple, but I bet it's tougher than it seems. Is that why so many people struggle with conflict?
It's definitely a factor. Research shows only about 36% of people can accurately identify emotions in the moment. So lots of us are walking around with these unlabeled feelings, leading to miscommunication and frustration.
That makes this skill even more valuable. If you can accurately read people's emotions, you're way ahead of the game.
Okay, so we've got the understanding part down. What about the doing part? How do we put social awareness into action?
That brings us to our final domain, relationship management. This is where it all comes together. Building strong connections, resolving conflicts, and fostering genuine trust. Think clear communication, active listening, finding that win-win solution.
So it's about putting all those other skills to work in real-life interactions, not just understanding emotions, but using that understanding to build better relationships.
Exactly. And this is something that benefits everyone, not just leaders. Even if you're not managing a team, think about your family, your friends, even that barista you see every morning. These skills can make those interactions so much smoother and more rewarding.
All right. I'm starting to see the big picture here, but if we zoom back in on those 16 habits you mentioned earlier, which ones really scream high EQ? What are those telltale signs? There are some fascinating ones in there. It's not about some rigid checklist, but rather about these underlying tendencies. Think embracing change instead of digging your heels in, letting go of past mistakes without beating yourself up. Those are hallmarks of someone with high EQ.
Okay, I can see how those tie back to the four domains. It's like the habits are the outward expression of the inner skills, right?
Exactly. And it's not about denying negative emotions. It's about having the self-awareness to recognize them, the self-management to regulate them, and the social awareness to express them constructively. You're not pretending everything's perfect. You're choosing a more empowered response. It's like you're taking the wheel of your emotional car instead of letting it drive you.
Okay. I'm really digging this EQ thing. So we've laid out these four domains, touched on some habits, but how do we actually cultivate those skills? Is it like learning a language or playing an instrument? where practice is key.
Absolutely. Just like any skill, the more you flex those EQ muscles, the stronger they get. But instead of scales or flashcards, you're practicing in those everyday moments.
So it's about being intentional, even in those seemingly small interactions.
Exactly. Think of it as emotional cross-training. Building self-awareness by noticing your reactions in a meeting. Practicing social awareness by really listening to a friend vent. Working on relationship management by having a tough conversation with your partner. It's all connected.
Okay, I like that. Emotional cross-training. It feels way more approachable than trying to become some EQ guru overnight. But speaking of challenges, is there anything that tends to trip people up on this EQ journey? What are some of those common roadblocks?
One big one is mistaking EQ for just being nice. It's not about suppressing your feelings or becoming a doormat. Healthy boundaries and assertive communication are still part of the equation.
It's not about denying your needs. It's about understanding them and expressing them effectively.
Right on. It's about finding that balance between self-respect and respecting others. And that brings me to another misconception. The idea that EQ is fixed. That you're either born with it or you're not.
Oh yeah, I've definitely heard that one. But we know that's not true, right? We can actually develop these skills over time.
Absolutely. Just like you can learn a new language or a musical instrument, you can develop your EQ. It takes conscious effort. But it's totally achievable. And the benefits are huge, not just for your career, but for your overall well-being.
All right, so let's get practical here.
Yeah.
What are some concrete steps people could take to start leveling up their EQ game?
One of the most powerful tools, and it's surprisingly simple, is mindfulness. It's about paying attention to the present moment without judgment, which sounds easy, but can be really challenging in our hyper-distracted world.
So no more scrolling through Instagram while supposedly listening to a friend.
Exactly. The more you practice mindfulness, the more aware you become of your thoughts, your feelings, your physical sensations. It's like you're building this inner observer that can witness those emotions without getting swept away by them.
So instead of getting hijacked by anxiety during a presentation, you can observe those anxious feelings and choose a more skillful response.
Right. Mindfulness isn't a magic bullet, but it lays the groundwork for everything else. And there are other practices too, like journaling to understand your emotional patterns, gratitude exercises to shift your mindset, even certain types of therapy that can be super helpful.
It sounds like there's no one-size-fits-all approach. It's about finding what works for you and sticking with it.
Exactly. And being patient with yourself. It's a journey, not a race. But speaking of journeys, we haven't talked much about EQ and leadership. This is where Goldman's research really shines.
Yeah, that 90% of top performers stat definitely piqued my interest. But does that mean you can't be a good leader without sky-high EQ?
It's definitely a huge advantage, but it's not the only thing. What's fascinating is that EQ seems to amplify other leadership qualities. Imagine someone who's strategic and decisive. Add high EQ. And they can inspire their team to achieve incredible things.
So it's like EQ is the secret ingredient that takes those other leadership skills to the next level.
Exactly. Emotionally intelligent leaders create this positive emotional climate where people feel safe to take risks, to innovate, to bring their A game. They foster trust, collaboration, and a shared sense of purpose.
And that translates into better results, both for the individual and the organization, right?
Right.
But what if someone isn't in a leadership role? Can these skills still benefit them?
Absolutely. Even if you're not managing a team, think about how EQ shows up in your everyday interactions with family, friends, colleagues. It can make those relationships so much richer and more fulfilling.
Okay, so EQ isn't just about climbing the corporate ladder. It's about improving the quality of our lives across the board.
Right. It's about becoming more self-aware, more empathetic, more skilled at navigating those messy human interactions that we all face. And, I've seen firsthand how developing these skills can be truly transformative.
Oh, I'd love to hear about that. What kind of transformations have you witnessed?
Wow. One that comes to mind is a client I worked with who was incredibly brilliant but struggled with social anxiety. He was avoiding networking events, presentations, even just casual conversations with colleagues. It was holding him back in his career.
So he had the technical skills, but lacked the EQ to really shine. What happened?
We worked on building his self-awareness around those anxious feelings, developing coping mechanisms, and practicing social skills in a safe environment. Over time, he started feeling more confident and comfortable in those situations that used to trigger his anxiety.
So it wasn't about fixing him. It was about giving him the tools to manage those feelings effectively.
Exactly. And the transformation was incredible. He started taking on leadership roles, presenting at conferences, even mentoring younger colleagues. It wasn't just about his career. His whole demeanor shifted. He became more open, more engaged, more genuinely himself.
That's so inspiring. It shows how EQ can unlock someone's full potential, not just professionally, but personally as well. And it brings us back to those 16 habits. We talked about embracing change and letting go of mistakes. Is there another one that stands out to you as particularly powerful?
One that's often overlooked, but so crucial, is giving without expectation. Emotionally intelligent people understand that true fulfillment comes from contributing to something larger than themselves.
It's not about keeping score or expecting something in return. It's about that genuine act of generosity,
Yeah.
of wanting to make a positive impact on others.
Right. It's about recognizing that we're all interconnected and that giving freely actually enriches our own lives as well. And, this ties back to that idea of EQ as a journey.
Oh, I see the connection. The more we give, the more we learn, the more we grow. It's like this beautiful cycle of expansion and connection. But speaking of cycles, is there anything about the future of EQ that particularly excites you? Where do you see this field heading?
What excites me is that we're finally starting to recognize EQ as a fundamental life skill, not just something for the corporate world. I see EQ being integrated into education, healthcare, even parenting. Imagine kids learning about self-regulation alongside math and science.
That's a game changer.
Yeah.
It's about equipping them with those emotional tools from a young age, so they're better prepared to navigate the complexities of life.
Exactly. And I think as we become more attuned to the importance of EQ, we'll see a shift in our values as a society. Imagine a world where empathy and compassion are celebrated as much as intelligence and achievement.
That's a world I want to live in. It's about recognizing that our emotional well-being is just as important as our physical and mental well-being.
Absolutely. And it all starts with each of us. As we cultivate our own EQ, we become ripples of positive change in the world. We inspire those around us to do the same. And those ripples spread outward, creating a more harmonious and fulfilling world for everyone.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. I feel like we've only scratched the surface of this vast and fascinating topic, but I know our listeners are eager to hear your final thoughts. Your parting wisdom on the transformative power of emotional intelligence. What message do you want to leave them with?
That's a wonderful way to wrap up. And the message I want to leave with our listeners is this: embrace the journey of EQ. It's not about perfection, it's about progress. It's about being curious, compassionate, and committed to personal growth. And it's a journey that has the power to transform not only your life, but the lives of those around you.
That's such a powerful and inspiring message, and I couldn't agree more. So to our listeners, as you embark on your own EQ adventures, remember that you have the power to create a more fulfilling, meaningful, and connected life. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep connecting. As we wrap up this deep dive, is there a particular nugget of wisdom that you'd want to impart? Something you wish more people understood about EQ?
For all the talk about success and leadership, what really gets me is the link between EQ and happiness. Those folks who can accurately identify and manage their emotions, they report higher levels of life satisfaction, stronger relationships, the whole package.
It makes sense, right? If you're constantly battling inner turmoil, it's hard to enjoy the good stuff.
Right.
But EQ gives you the tools to create more inner peace, even amidst chaos.
Exactly. It's like that saying, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. EQ helps you figure out what you can change, your reactions, your mindset, your approach to challenges.
And that feeling of empowerment, that sense of agency, is huge. It's not about being happy all the time. It's about having the skills to navigate those tough emotions without letting them run the show.
Right. And the beauty is, it's never too late to start cultivating these skills. You don't need some drastic personality overhaul. Small, consistent changes can make a world of difference.
So for our listener out there who's ready to take that first step on their EQ journey, what would you recommend? Where's the best place to start?
Honestly, start with curiosity. Pay attention to your emotional landscape. How do you react in different situations? What are your triggers? What brings you joy? The more you understand yourself, the more effectively you can manage your emotions and connect with others.
It's like we've been saying all along, self-awareness is the foundation of EQ. Once you have that solid base, the rest starts falling into place.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to experiment. Try different mindfulness techniques. Read books on emotional intelligence. Have those tough conversations with loved ones. It's all part of the learning process.
It sounds like EQ is less about following a rigid set of rules and more about this ongoing exploration, this willingness to learn and grow.
You nailed it. And the beauty is, the more you invest in your EQ, the more rewarding those relationships, your career, even just your daily life becomes.
This has been an absolutely incredible deep dive. I feel like I've learned so much, not just about EQ, but about myself as well. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and insights with us.
The pleasure was all mine. It's been such a joy to delve into this topic with you.
And to our listener out there, we hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into the world of emotional intelligence. Remember, EQ isn't just some abstract concept. It's a set of skills that can empower you to create a more fulfilling and meaningful life. So go out there, embrace your EQ journey, and discover the transformative power of these incredible skills. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep connecting.